So welcome, everybody. So you all made it. So I hope there's no confusion about our new technical systems. Excuse me. So after today, you will have to re-register, and we're using our company evaporated. So the new company we're using will send out a reminder 30 minutes before the gathering. And you can also find us live on YouTube. So just remember, you need to re-register. So this is actually our 7th or 8th and final teaching on the Bodhisattva Vow. It will echo always in all of the teachings. But as Kathy was reading the opening prayers, we were reconnecting step by step to the layers of the Bodhisattva Vow that His Holiness gave, the layers of our aspiration and of our deep commitment, and then nurturing that commitment. So I want to start again with a little bit of an illustration. And I thought, as I was reflecting this weekend, I thought it was really quite significant that we began the new year and we began the Tibetan New Year with the Bodhisattva Vow and the Bodhisattva ideal. Let me see. Pull up. I just want to get this larger. There we go. Okay. So I want to talk a little bit about the Bodhisattva ideal because if you think about the evolution of human beings, human cultures, human societies, it's quite extraordinary that the idea of removing oneself from suffering, removing one's family, one's tribe, one's community from suffering and into great peace, evolved into the philosophical concept and commitment of all sentient beings. That is quite an evolution of the human mind, of the human psychology, to have that great understanding. And even early Buddhism had certainly great teachings on compassion, but it was an evolution of early Buddhism that went from individual liberation to all sentient beings. So you could say it's one of the turning points in the capacity of the human mind to conceptualize vast compassion, even though there might have been individuals along the way. Now we have a whole movement. And I love the way it was visually expressed. And for someone like me who is an artist, I saw the visual expression first and made a connection to that. You know, what is this culture? What is this philosophy that can imagine compassion in such a way? So on the screen, you're seeing two slides, one from the Japanese tradition on the right and one from the Tibetan tradition on the left. So we have this evolution of she or he who hears the cries of the world. So sees the suffering, not just of self, not just of family, but all sentient beings. And this beautiful conception of Chen Reizig is the evolution of this great bodhisattva breaking free into vast mind. And in the vast mind, now there are 11 heads that can see in all direction and 1,000 arms. And in the Tibetan tradition, we have the heads going up. And if you look at the one, not the top, but the one next to the top, that's fierce compassion, the one next to the top. So there's an understanding of the range of compassion and the appearance of compassion extending to what is needed for beings to be liberated. Then in the Japanese tradition, you see all of the 1,000 arms, they're all holding different things. So there's the commitment to training in the Dharma so that when beings are suffering, one of the hands is holding the Dharma medicine that is needed for that being suffering. So there's just a slight variation of how human minds enriched the understanding of what compassion is. And as a young person, I became deeply interested in compassion in my 30s as a value to be really investigated. And it occurred in relation to the first actual death that I witnessed of a good friend. And this good friend was being cared for by her partner. And I would go over with another friend and we would help, bringing food, sitting with Hilda, just being present with, you need more medicine, we'll go get it, you need this, that, whatever. And I saw the partner just taking such soft, gentle, tender care that it just moved me tremendously as Hilda started, in a hospital bed in the living room, deteriorating and going into a final coma. And she had a very slow death. And at a certain point, of course, her partner couldn't be up day and night. And so they hired a hospice nurse to come in to help with the, pain control and the medical. And I just saw that this hospice nurse was tireless. And I was amazed at that because when I would go and visit, it was, as a young person, sort of emotional overload. And I would come home and I would just need to rest. And I didn't know how to think about what I was seeing and experiencing. So I saw this hospice nurse who, of course, Hilda was a stranger to her, but who could give compassionate care in the same way the partner was giving compassionate care as she dealt with the medical realities. So I was so impressed with this that at that point I was teaching art and I was ready for a sabbatical. And during that sabbatical, I went to the Connecticut hospice because they had an art program there in I think it was a 65-bed hospice. So I wanted to see, well, how do they train the nurses and how does art interface with the dying process? So when I was there, the nurses had extraordinary intention of caring in the same way this hospice nurse that I had witnessed, absolutely the same intention. But they were in a 60-bed hospice where one of their patients would die every day. And as I worked there, I think I worked there for 3 or 4 months, every day going in. I established friendships and trust with the nurses. And one day they invited me to sit with them in a meeting. And in the meeting, they started expressing their pain of what they were starting to name as multiple death trauma. So this was the same period as the AIDS crisis. And there were many people giving dedicated care, and there was a lot of death and dying. And the nurses saw that they had the intention, but at the moment of death, it became unbearable in terms of their accumulated pain, and they would find some job that had to be done so that they weren't there at the very moment of death. And then that was so painful for them because it was in contradiction to their intention and dedication, and they didn't know what to do about it. You know, certainly more space, more rest, not filling the bed an hour later. There are lots of things that could be done at a practical level. But what I saw was the pain of the beautiful intention and the contradiction of the intention and how painful that was. So to me, I identified that as the beginning of my lifelong commitment to understanding bodhicitta. And it's sort of the line of demarcation from when I went from being I'll go to a teaching maybe if I feel like it, or maybe this weekend I'll set aside to, this is my life's commitment to really understand this, to go deeply into the Tibetan tradition, because in the Tibetan tradition, I could see here was a group of people who were coming from extraordinary circumstances. They were refugees. Many of them had been tortured. Many of them had lost a great deal of their families, but their reservoir of bodhicitta was unaffected by that. Their capacity, particularly the teachers that were coming to America, to see, yes, my family is in trouble. Yes, my culture, is on the verge of being lost. Yes, we have not a cent. And now we see the cries of the world instead of our monastery hidden away in the mountains. We see and hear the cries of the world, and we're available to the world. And so I could see that this extraordinary joy and vast commitment could be actualized in human beings in a lifetime. And that then set my commitment to learning about compassion and bodhicitta, which was the particular doorway that I had coming into Buddhism. Let's see if we can get the next slide. So if we think about the Bodhisattva vow that was just taken, and the words, as we read it every morning, there's a sense of the aspiration, which we might feel is like the little seedling. Isn't it a miracle that bodhicitta has been born in my heart? Those seedlings are so fragile, the stems are so fragile. But how do we strengthen this fragile seed that we have discovered is definitely there in our hearts into the strength of let's say a sapling, and then into the great tree of bodhicitta, the great tree of that vast compassionate commitment. And so that's where we get into keeping the Bodhisattva vow and strengthening, not weakening. So if you think of the prayer that we do, just 2 lines of the prayer from Shantideva, so too for the benefit of beings shall I give birth to that bodhicitta and progressively train myself in that discipline. That's what we're talking about today. how do we allow that seedling to grow of aspiration? And what is the progressive training? So His Holiness was talking about that there are differences in capacity. This is true. There's the way that he is practicing with bodhicitta, and there's the way I am practicing with bodhicitta. So Lord Jigten Sumgun said, for the people who have reached the vast capacity, what does their day look like? What does their connection to this mind look like? And so the people of vast capacity, it has never gone from their mind. They never zone out forgetting it. I've spent time in Dharamsala, and when he was younger, probably not now, but when he was younger, the Dalai Lama did not take one day off. Technically, he had one day off, but that day off he would go to visit the children's village, and the children would put a huge show. So when he thought of his life and his days, it was always in the context of this vast commitment. And Lord Jigten Sumgun describes it as, if we look at the time it takes to lift one foot up and put it back down again as we're walking, it's not forgotten for even that moment of time. So then, what would be an aspiration that we might have? So we know we are not quite at that level, but then Holiness was saying, well, people at the middle level who have, really made a firm commitment that this is the most important thing in life, then let's look at every 4 hours. During the period of every 4 hours, are we recommitting to it? Are we thinking of the suffering of sentient beings? And the sense is that in the 4-hour period, we might be watching the news, and we might see someone on the news who is instigating great violence in the world, and we might think, I'm just not able to help this situation. I'm not able to help this person. I abandon them. And that's just the moment where it's like that little stem is just at the moment, didn't get enough water. And so it's just, I have a little flower that I let the water run out a little bit. And the flowers started turning over, the leaves started turning over. And when I watered it, you could just see the whole flower perk back up. So he's saying, well, in the 4-hour period, there may have been beings that you intentionally abandoned. You might have had a fight with someone, all those things. Pour the water of bodhicitta on that plant of the bodhisattva commitment and watch it perk back up. So how do we do that? And one thing I really love that we're going to explore this morning is the great master Jamgon Khantrul Rinpoche wrote a list of like 50 to 100 remembrances, and they were simple. I'm going in and out a doorway. I'm opening my front door. As I open the door, I'm remembering to open the door of liberation to all sentient beings. If he was going upstairs, I'm going upstairs and I'm bringing all sentient beings with me to liberation. If he was, let's say if he was watering the plants, just as I was, may I water the bodhicitta of the aspiration of all sentient beings and all of the elements that make up this world. in order to benefit all sentient beings. So he wrote for himself a list, and then that's how he practiced throughout his day. Every time he wasn't sitting in meditation, absorbed in meditation, and he was acting, he made a way to think of each action connected to his Bodhisattva commitment. So we're going to work with that a little bit in just a minute, but I want to keep going. So then, what if we're not quite at that capacity yet? And we know that, we're not remembering every 4 hours, and that occasionally we do shut down, feel overwhelmed, or feel anger, or feel attachment. And I don't care, I just need to, sit down and take care of myself right now. So we go into a kind of self-absorption. Perfectly ordinary. This is ordinary. So we want to connect that tendency back to the aspiration of our Bodhisattva aspiration. And so then we want to be assured, first of all, that we can't break or lose the Bodhisattva vow. I showed you the little seedling, but the seedling came from a seed. And in taking the Bodhisattva vow and in reading these prayers that we do for every practice, we are imprinting in our consciousness the seed of the Bodhisattva vow and the seed of the Bodhisattva intention, and they are there. And because they are there, because there is an infallibility of karmic cause and fruition, one day they will blossom. So let's say we realize, well, I'm either in a very ordinary mind or somewhere in between being able to remember many times a day an ordinary mind. What does it mean when we say, well, we'll progressively train myself in that discipline? What does that line mean? So that is where we're heading. That is where we're heading in our Sunday Dharma, and that's where I hope we're all heading in our life. What is the training in that discipline? So following in the footsteps of the great enlightened beings, in our lineage, just in one lineage, we have great masters alive today that we can see are Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. We have His Holiness Drikung Chetseng Rinpoche, we have the Dalai Lama, we have Garchen Rinpoche, we have Nuba Rinpoche. We have these great masters. When we say we're going to follow in their footsteps, then we begin training in the Dharma path. And that includes, what does it mean to train in ethical discipline, moderation, restraint, so we're not harming ourselves or others. There is then the training in delight in practicing virtue and benefiting beings. What does that mean? We use in general the term accumulation. So we're learning how not to harm ourselves or others, and we're learning how to take steps in benefiting beings. So one of the things I love about Buddhism is we can look at the big view, at the big picture. We're not abandoning any sentient beings. What does that mean on a day-to-day level? As we've been talking all along, all these years, it means not going into the bubble of self-absorption, self-centeredness, and using the Dharma practice to clear our way, our obscurations, and move from that samsaric mind of self-absorption into a big heart bodhisattva mind. And the next level of instructions are, okay, how do we do that? Certainly we've been studying Lojong, but we could, from other texts, taking down to 4 things. So one expression of what not to do is praising oneself and belittling others. So you can see, oh yeah, if I start praising myself to make others feel small, that is definitely self-centered. That is the opposite of bodhicitta. Okay, that might weaken because my mind has shifted from how can I benefit others to how can I benefit myself. So we have this shift in our mind, and then how else can we recognize sort of a moving away from strengthening our Bodhisattva vow? Withholding dharma or withholding a gift. So if we have the means to offer a gift and we get fearful and we say, no, I can't offer this gift, whether it's, if appropriate, the Dharma, or certainly in terms of our material wealth, then that's a weakening because we've shifted into I, me, and mind. We've shifted into fear as opposed to benefiting. And remember, it has the caveat, if we have the material wealth to do it. So it's not saying you should impoverish yourself. It's more, how do you learn about generosity? So the next of the 4 main weakenings, not accepting an apology and retaliating out of anger. So someone who's hurt you terribly wants to apologize, opening and letting the person apologize. If we're really angry, not retaliating. So in both cases, we're looking at what is our emotional state of mind, what is the so-called situation, and even the most difficult person who has hurt you very badly, if they want to apologize, not accepting their apology. And then the 4th is abandoning the Mahayana teachings. So having received the Mahayana teachings, saying, giving up, or misrepresenting the Dharma. So not giving false teachings and not giving teachings that are coming through a lens of an afflictive emotion. So let's say the Lojong, I don't think it's a Lojong slogan, but there is a slogan, don't use the Dharma as a weapon. So you're in this Sangha and someone is having a lot of trouble and they're irritating, and you pull up some, if you were really a bodhisattva, you'd have patience. So that's using the Dharma as a weapon. So that is not seeing what the other person needs, and saying something that may be true, but through the filter of your emotional affliction in a way that's hurtful, not helpful. So those are, often called the 4 key remembrances. So what happens? Occasionally we do this. We just are, subject still to our habitual patterns. Then we sit down and we take the Bodhisattva again. You go right to, the beautiful prayer book. I'll make sure it's on the website this week, both the Sunday prayer book and the Tuesday, Thursday prayer book, but visualizing the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, reciting those words, reconnecting to the Bodhisattva aspiration, and knowing that cannot be broken, but watering with bodhicitta those seedlings that are fragile so they pop back up and start to grow into the vast mind the vast capacity. And it's also the reason we take the Bodhisattva vow as part of all of our practices, because, we could have unintentionally harmed a bug, as water going into a sink. We could have unintentionally not had a great tone of voice, all those things. So over and over again, we take the Bodhisattva vow, knowing we couldn't ever lose it, but that we want to keep strengthening it. So now I'd like to take, going back to Jamgon Khantrul Rinpoche, the great master, I'd like take some time for each one of us to reflect and just think about what habit you have. Like in the morning, I make my tea in a certain way. Every morning I do it exactly the same way. Is there a remembrance and connection to the Bodhisattva vow that I can connect with tea making? Or not every day, but lots of days, I open and shut my car door. Certainly every day, I open a cupboard door. What is one habit that you can connect to that is something you might be doing every 4 hours? And write a sentence down of how you would express it. I open this door so that all sentient beings come with me into liberation. I open this door so that I can see the vast lineage of the teachings. I'm thinking of opening the door with the dishes in it, and not seeing the dishes, but seeing that incredible visualization. I open the door to the visualization and recommit to liberating all sentient beings. So let's take just about 5 minutes to really think, all right, this is the one thing I'm going to try and remember. And I'm going to write it down. If I find tomorrow that's not the best one, I'm going to sit down and think about it again. But one habit that you're going to commit to, and write the sentence that connects it to your Bodhisattva aspiration. So really let it sink in. Just one habit, one remembrance. You know, we're imperfect. We may forget it one day, but we may forget it half a day. But if we write it out and tape it to the cupboard door or the teapot or the car door or someplace that we can see it regularly, we can commit to it. So I'm going to invite anyone who would like to share what they wrote down. Sorry, we had some hacking experiences during the week, so we have new security things. Eileen, what would you like to share? Eileen, on your iPhone, you should be able to unmute yourself. Okay, so.
Got it. You know, this kind of fits in with what I was looking at yesterday, a little bit. But what came out for me was I always open the door, dreading to let the dogs out every morning because I'm exhausted or cold or still asleep. So this is really a wonderful way for me to try to remember this, you know, because I do it, and I do it every few hours if I'm around. So what I wrote was, moment by moment, I remember that I am not separate from those I dislike or like, judge or revile, that we are one body.
Well, how wonderful. Thank you for sharing that, both the beauty of what you wrote and, you know, I remember having a dog in the house and opening the door so regularly, so perfect. Other folks, what would you like to share? So remember, you can unmute yourself now. So if you'd like to share. Is that you, Ginny, or you? Okay.
I'm muting, yes. Okay. I had a bit of a problem because I had to use my phone. And I found that difficult to hear you. I couldn't get the phone. I couldn't get the same thing on my iPad as I could on my cell phone. And are we going to always use a cell phone?
No, you don't have to use your cell phone. The Zoom should work normally, just like it works on your iPad.
Thank you.
But that's a really good key for me, Ginny, because I do use my phone every 4 hours, I bet. And so I'm going to really think about when I turn on the phone, I have a picture of His Holiness as my screen. I can just think of, may I hear the cries of the world when I open my phone.
I'm going to have to remember that. Thank you, because I can't use my phone. I can't hear it. I never use it. And so today, when the phone numbers came up to use the phone, I said, oh, I can't do this. because my body doesn't want to use the phone. I can't hear it. And so thank you for what you just said.
So there may be a little bit of a technical difficulty this first week. Zoom works the way Zoom works. If you register, you will get the Zoom code for your computer. And I'll check that what we're sending out for our codes includes phones, because I know some people, I can see, Ginny, that you're connecting with your phone today. So please forgive us. We haven't changed our Zoom code in a couple of years. We've had too many incidents with hackers. And our company went out of business, our registration company. So few technical things going on, but should be working.
So do the Zoom codes that we've been using, are they still valid?
No, starting next week, they're different. So you have to go online to our website and re-register for weekly meditation.
At Vajra Dakini, we have to go to and get the codes.
That's right. And if you're on Annie's list, the Sangha list, she also sent out the codes, but we didn't include the phone numbers. So we can
why are we using a phone?
You don't have to use a phone, Ginny. Some people like using a phone.
For what?
For Zoom. You can connect by phone or the regular way through your computer or iPad. But the codes have changed. The Zoom codes are changing. And so you need to re-register. And in your email, 30 minutes before the class, you should get a reminder that have the Zoom codes in it as well. Annie. You have to unmute, Annie. You have to unmute.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I got it. I was going to suggest, I know the comments are disabled, but I could put in the link on your website where they have to re-register, if that's helpful.
Thank you. What we noticed was that some people were registering every week because they couldn't remember the codes. So this is a new system. You won't have to you'll get the Zoom codes once and you'll get a reminder before each class. You can just click on it and it'll open Zoom. Other thoughts about the Bodhisattva habit? Would anyone else like to share? Yes, Peggy, I have it so that everybody can unmute themselves, but I'm going to. Okay, Peggy.
Got it now. And so let me see if I can start my video too. No, still can't start the video, but anyway. What I was going to share was my the way I'm going to remember to practice, and that is every time I go to the bathroom, I will say, may the suffering be eased for all people who do not have a private and clean place to use the bathroom.
Oh, that's lovely. Thank you. And we will get this security. I apologize for the technical difficulties today. It will be worked out in the next week. So Barbara, you should be able to unmute. And did you want to share something?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I said the video I couldn't start. I can unmute. I just didn't know if I did something wrong. I'm sorry to keep taking this up, the time for this, but I do have a lot of things that I have already in place, but I just don't always remember them, you know? So I guess I'm going to have to find one in particular. you know. One thing I do say normally is, we're the same. You know, when something will happen, we're the same. Like, you know, because I can be very judgmental.
Uh-huh.
So I'm like, yeah, we're the same. That doesn't matter if it's a 7-year-old, a 91-year-old, a 30-year-old, we're the same, you know.
Well, that's lovely. That's like instant one-word Tonglen.
Yeah, I have to do that.
You know, having one thing is really, really helpful, because when we try and do a lot of things, then the effort gets in the way of the keeping all of that, keeping the commitment present when we are bombarded by daily life. So let's start out with one thing. And then when that one thing is, you know, just as much of the habit of pouring the water onto the tea or going to the toilet, then add another and another. And eventually we'll get to the same level of Jamgon Khantrul, where every moment of the day was reconnecting to the commitment. So it's about time for the dedication, Kathy, and then Kathy will invite you to give the conclusion of the Bodhisattva class, Dana talk, or Dana reminder. Okay, so first the dedication prayers.
By this virtue, may I achieve omniscience, and may all who travel on the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death cross the ocean of samsara by defeating all enemies, confusion, the cause of suffering. Bodhicitta, the excellent and precious mind, where it is unborn, may it arise. Where it is born, may it not decline, but ever increase higher and higher. I pray that the Lama may have good health. I pray that the Lama may have long life. I pray that your Dharma activities spread far and wide. I pray that I may not be separated from you. For this realm encircled by snow-covered mountains, you are the source of every benefit and bliss without exception. Tenzin Gyatso, you who are one with Avalokiteshvara, may you remain steadfast until samsara's end. Embodiment of the three precious jewels, Padmapani, who holds the teachings of the victorious one, seeing the all-goodness meaning with the wisdom eye. May you who are spontaneously established activities live long for hundreds of kalpas. Noble Manjushri, the Lord of Speech, who manifests to hold the teachings of the Triple Gem, who raises the lamp of the sage's teachings, may you who are the light of the Dharma live long for hundreds of kalpas. The one known in the Holy Land as Aryadeva, emanated into the Gar clan of eastern Tibet as Chodingpa, the heart son of Jingtensumgun. May the life of glorious Garchen remain steadfast for 100 eons. We acknowledge that Vajra Dakini Nunnery is on the traditional unceded land of the Wabanaki Confederacy, the stewards of this land for many centuries before European settlement. We honor all Indigenous peoples' beliefs, cultural heritage, their relationship with the land, the knowledge of their elders, and the spirit of their ancient ones. This recognition of Indigenous territorial land and beliefs is a small step along the long road of recognizing the truth of our shared history and moving towards reconciliation. We will continue this journey with our Indigenous neighbors as we weave our paths together in right relation. So it's always so good to be with you. And today, well, I'd like to let you know at Vajra Dakini, we're really at an inflection point. And we're, as you know, Vajra Dakini helped organize, and when I say Vajra Dakini Nunnery, I'm talking about Khenmo Drolma. She does it all. And so anyway, we helped organize and put and support the Varsa. And remember, this is the Varsa where nuns were invited for the first time in 2,000 years to be part of the Varsa and receive teaching and create a community among themselves. It's usually reserved just for monks. So that was big. That's huge. It took a lot of resources to do that. And I want, today's Khenmo's talk spoke about when she first understood compassion. She was seeing it around herself, and she was seeing the challenges that come with being compassionate. And yet she dedicated her life to that, fully aware of the complete package of compassion. And so we have a teacher who has committed herself completely to a life of compassion. And in that life, it's symbiotic. For people who are teachers, you understand this. Teachers need to teach. It's in them. And teachers and the symbiotic relationship with their students is students want to learn. And so there is no separation between ourselves and our teacher. And, from the Dharma, our teacher took on a human form, which means food, clothing, shelter, all of that is based on donation. And it's dana. So dana is a Pali word which means generosity. And many of you know there are the 6 paramitas, and the paramitas, when you study them, they begin with generosity. That's where it all begins. And it's not familiar to Westerners. Usually we pay for things, it's a transaction. This is not a transaction. This is keeping a steady flow of the Dharma through our teacher, through us, like a pebble's ripple effect. We share the Dharma because we receive these precious teachings. So I would like you to consider that when you think about Vajra Dakini, when you think about Khenmo, and are grateful for her. Remember that to bring all these teachings, her life is dedicated to the teachings and teaching until her last breath, really. So please make sure that these teachings continue and that the growth of Vajra Dakini continues throughout the world. So thank you for considering this today, the practice of generosity.
Thank you, Kathy. That was a very kind expression. Also to say, when I was talking about making a mandala to His Holiness Drikung Chetsang Rinpoche, we actually give 10% of the donations that come to us then go to the lineage. And so when I gave the mandala offering to His Holiness, some of you donated particularly for that offering, but also the offerings that came in December, we gave His Holiness $1,000, and we make an annual donation to the nuns so that they have support in India, and so that we have future teachers. So we'll be giving another $1,500 to the nuns, which is a little more than 10% of what came into from our winter appeal. So it's a flow. The teachings flow through the lineage. They support the new teachers coming up. It supports the teachers who are currently teaching in this quite beautiful system of everything being supported by great loving generosity. So 11 o'clock, thank you everyone. It may be a little technically offered this week, but I think then it will smooth out again. So don't get discouraged. And it's been wonderful to start the year with the Bodhisattva Vow. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. So great to see you all.